Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video, and today we're going to do a character guide on Exdeath. So Exdeath is basically a gravity HP poison type character. The bad thing about HP poison in today's meta is that it doesn't scale with force time, so that's very unfortunate. Doesn't mean that Exdeath is bad, but because that HP poison isn't going to scale with force time, you're going to get more damage out of like an off turn, a traditional off turn damage dealer than Exdeath. But Exdeath, like at his core, like he's not a bad character, right? You're just not going to get nearly as much damage out of him in a force time. So I'll kind of do a little demo, kind of show you how he works. So you can see if you like him or not, right? So the first thing I'm going to do before I get too far is let's just jump into the call really quick. So the main reason that you'd want to use his calls are pretty much if you want like some on-demand gravity. Like if you don't have gravity and you want to get some of that, you definitely can go with that, right? His base call here, Almageist, does put a curse debuff on the enemies, which is a small HP poison. And it does do an attack and defense and speed down. So that is something that, like, if you just need debuffs to put on the enemy, that's another reason that you might want to use it. So basically gravity and then a little bit of HP poison debuff there. And then his LD call, basically it'll gravity the enemies down to 0 completely. So once again, you can use it in a tight spot where you might have enemies that they reduce all your brave damage to 1s. They're like really hard to break. There are some enemies that have done that in the past where you just need to be able to break them somehow. So having this on-demand gravity could be really, really good. And then it puts 2 different debuffs on the enemies, Bud of Darkness and Diffusing Vortex. And I'll talk about what those debuffs do as I go through the guide. But basically it's, once again, just HP damage, poison type things, and then like just good debuffs on the enemies. So this is a sphere that I think you definitely could get use out of. Once again, I would say the main reason that you'd want to use these calls are if you need gravity and you're not running gravity in the party, or if you need debuffs. So for example, on DE10, like the boss needs debuffs. So if you need to like toss a few debuffs on with a call, Exdeath can definitely help with that, right? So that's the calls there. Then let's go back in. Let's look at the artifacts and the spheres. Now, basically, when you're thinking of artifacts and spheres, you want to think very one-dimensional here. You want attack, attack, attack. Not even magic attack. You just want straight-up attack. The reason why is Exdeath's gravity and a lot of the HP poison scales off of attack. So the higher you can get this guy's attack, the better. So for the artifacts, you want to go 3 like attack 108, and then whatever you have on the second one is fine. But the best one is Seeker of the Void Boost 2-star, which is the C50, because that has more attack in it. So attack 108, Seeker of the Void Boost, this is the best artifact combo you can have. But otherwise, do attack 108 Max Brave, attack 108, any 2-star, like just anything you can get on there. He does do a little bit of battery, so you could throw a little Eye Brave on there. But as long as you got 3 attack 108s, like then you should be good. Okay, and then once again, going to the spheres, same thing. You just want attack, attack, attack. So just the highest attack modifying spheres you can get, depending on how much you want to invest in them, how much you're going to use them, right? So I just have his own on him because, once again, this is something I did back in the day before I really understood spheres. A lot of times on a character, I would just put their own sphere on them. So Exdeath, luckily, it worked out because it's a really nice just attack up 10%. So Exdeath's own sphere actually isn't bad. I do think there might be a 15% attack out there. I wouldn't know it off the top of my head. But 10% on a full sphere is a pretty standard one. So if you can just give them at least a 10% attack sphere, I would say you're good on the A slot. And just make sure that it's a condition that he can satisfy, right? The thing with Exdeath, like, don't put any spheres that require breaking because he doesn't really break. Like, everything does gravity, so he's just going to be lowering the brave, but he really doesn't break with most of his attacks. So just keep that in mind. The E slot you want attack, which is basically going to be Seymour, Yuffie, or Emperor. So those are the main E slot attack spheres. And as long as it says does not stack, you can do 2 of the same one. So I actually refined quite a few Yuffies the last time she was out. So I just put 2 Yuffies right on there. So basically when he's debuffing, he's getting some attack. So you can stack Yuffies. So if you want to do 2 the same, go ahead and do that. So that's what you want to do on the sphere. So once again, just think attack and you're good to go. So let's go ahead and hop in. And we're just going to hop into the same Shinryu fight that I like to do. I'm not really going to worry about the friend unit here. Summon, I guess, doesn't really matter that much, but we'll just throw something on. All right, so we'll go ahead and hop in here. So basically, if you're trying to team build around Exdeath, basically party members that like raise attack like will really help enable them, right? Because the more attack, the more HP damage, poison, and stuff you're going to be doing. But he's a character you can kind of slide. I kind of see Exdeath as like a slot 3 character. So for example, when you're team building, you know, you slot your main DPS, then you slot your support, and then that third flexible spot. Because I kind of see Exdeath is not necessarily a straight DPS. I think of him as more of like a utility unit because he's got utility in the gravity. He's got utility in the HP poison. But he's not necessarily dealing out the most damage, right? So he's kind of like a mid-range damage dealer, but has good utility in the debuffing, the poisons, and the gravity, right? So that's kind of the way I see Exdeath. I think of him as like a slot 3 character. Let's go ahead here. I put the Brave Regen on. Let's go ahead and just put the BT effect on. Just so you guys know also, my Exdeath in this video is LD only, but I will go ahead and explain the burst effect. So I'll just do that now while this animation is playing. So his burst effect, like pretty much everything in his kit's going to do a big battery, do a lot of damage depending on how far you upgrade it. His burst effect is actually really interesting. Basically, it does a lot of good party buffs, so you're getting attack, HP damage limit. Actually, pretty good values, 30% HP damage up and then 30% HP damage limit. Those are pretty good. That's pretty good numbers there, right? But the unique thing that he does is at the start of any turn, he's going to do a party battery, and then enemies are going to take true HP damage. So it's just like, basically it's just going to scale off of his attack and like just do that damage to the enemies. HP damage reduction, I don't know if HP damage reduction would reduce it because it's considered true damage. But yeah, it's basically like an additional, you can think of it as like an HP poison, but it's considered true damage instead of HP poison. So it's just very, very good damage, right? And what you're going to find is in his normal kit, he has 2 different HP poisons he can put on. So if you've got the BT effect up, you're going to be doing 2 HP damage poisons and then the true damage poison, which is very good. So you can get a lot of damage. The bad part is in Shinryu, it's a little underwhelming because even though you're doing all those ticks, it does add up over time, but you're not scaling with force. So that's the really unfortunate part. If his poison scaled with force, he would actually be like one of the better characters in the game. Like as like that off turn slot that you're using like for Kane and Cisne, like he'd be really good in that slot, right? But unfortunately that's not the case. So the way I like to start off Exdeath is I like to open with LD. So let's go ahead and open with the LD here. Basically the LD, it's going to do a full gravity, so it's just going to reduce their brave to 0. So no matter what their brave is at, it just flat out takes it to 0. Does a brave gain, does that big attack there, as you can see. He's going to get a free ability use on his next turn. And then the big thing is it's going to put 2 debuffs on the enemies. So the enemies are going to get Bud of Darkness and Diffusing Vortex. So if we look at the enemies here. Whoops. Okay, so we've got Diffusing Vortex. Diffusing Vortex basically is going to do a big attack down, and it's going to do HP poison. So every time the enemies take a turn, they're going to get that HP poison tick. The big thing with Bud of Darkness is like having it's a stacking ability, right? So you can see it's got gold lettering there. So basically, as you use moves that put on Bud of Darkness, it adds stacks to it. But once it's at max stacks, it's going to actually improve his other skills. So I'll talk about it when I go through the skills that are affected. But one reason to open with the LD is, one, you're getting the HP poison on, because that HP poison is coming from the Diffusion Vortex, and that's the only way to get that particular HP poison. And then you're just getting the max stacks right away of Bud of Darkness. So that's why I like opening with that, right? So let's go ahead and swap back into him. All right. Then what I recommend doing next is doing the 35. So we'll go ahead and go into the 35 here. And this is a free skill use. Now, if you feel like you're going to be good on skill uses, you could go into the AA and just put that like attack boost up on, which is fine because that's just going to, in general, help him out because it's giving him attack, right? But then we could go into the 35. So let's do that. So what you're going to see here, once again, it is a gravity and then attack. And you notice he did not actually break the enemies, right? Now we can see the HP damage poison tick there. And you're going to notice they're going to take 2 ticks. So the reason why I recommend going into the 35 after the LD, it's going to put the curse debuff on the enemies, which is the other HP poison. So what you notice there is after each enemy went, they took 2 different HP poison ticks. Let's go ahead and swap back into Exdeath. Then from there, you really can press whatever buttons you want. You just really want to manage and try to keep the HP poisons up as much as possible, right? So let's go ahead and look at the 15. Black Hole, it's got a lot of skill uses, so this is a really good skill to press just if you're not sure. If you're in between refreshing buffs, you're not really sure what to press, this is a good button you can just press. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so you can see pretty decent low damage there. And keep in mind, my Exdeath is far from maxed out, so that's actually pretty good damage we're getting just doing like 500 plus K on these gravity shots, because he doesn't even have a BT, he's not green, he's not blue armor, so there's a lot of damage on the table based on my Exdeath. So this is more just seeing how he operates, right? So what we just saw there from Black Hole, it's a gravity based on his attack. Once again, he does a brave gain. And then what happens is the splash damage that comes from that, it scales higher based on the Bud of Darkness stacks. So because we have Bud of Darkness stacked up higher, we got more splash damage. Same with the 35 that we just did. That also like increased attack based on the Bud of Darkness. So just keep in mind that Bud of Darkness being maxed out is going to improve the damage of the 15 and 35 attacks, right? So that's pretty much it there. So let's go ahead and swap back in again, and we should have the EX up now, and we can show that off. Okay, yep, so we'll go and do that. So basically what the EX is going to do, it is going to do, it's going to do another gravity, and it's going to scale off of his attack once again. So let's go ahead and pop that EX, and let's just watch the damage here. I'm kind of curious, this is my first time using him C90, so I'm just curious what the damage is going to look like here. Okay, about 550k AoE. Once again, if you fully invest this guy, you're going to be pushing probably 750k on that, maybe close to a mil. Which is actually really good damage. Plus, he's got gravity, and gravity is awesome because no matter what kind of gimmick the enemies are using to reduce your brave, he can just say, nope, your brave is down to basically nothing, right? So, from his EX, he does get a buff from that, and the buff basically gives him attack, HP damage up, max brave, HP regen, and brave regen. So, that's very good that he gets all that from that buff. And then, there's something very unique from this. So, what happens is they should have a debuff now, a one-turn debuff called Power of the Void. This is a ridiculously good debuff. Now, they only get this debuff if you use the EX when Bud of Darkness is at max stacks. Once again, why I like just opening with the LD, because it puts it at max stacks, and then as long as you upkeep the buff, it's just going to stay at max stacks, and then you just know the rest of his kit is going to operate good like it should, right? So, now what happens with this Power of the Void, which is very, very cool, and there's a reason it's only a one-turn buff, because it's very good. Basically, it reduces the enemy's HP damage dealt to 0. So they basically cannot do HP damage to you, which is very, very good. And then on their turn, their Brave is also going to get reduced to 0. So basically, you could almost think of it as kind of like a Raijin in a way, where like the enemies just can't touch you for that turn, which is really, really good. So Exdeath can combo well. Because if we look here, his EX is going to take a little bit to charge up, right? If you combo Exdeath with like Lewd or like an EX charging character, I think Ashe can do it as well. You can basically upkeep this fairly frequently and then just make it so that enemies can't do HP damage to you, which is actually a pretty cool thing. So pairing him with the EX charging character actually could be very cool, right? So anyways, guys, there you go. That's pretty much everything on Exdeath. Not a bad character. It's just unfortunate the HP poisons don't scale with the Force Time. Let me know what you guys all think of Exdeath. Thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all on the next one.